Hi, Stouffville. We're back. This is Charlene with Off the Top, 102.7 FM on WhiStle Radio. We're here this afternoon with Phil Bannon, a candidate for the mayoral position in Stouffville. And right now, Phil and I are talking about some of his accomplishments in the last decade plus. How many years has it been exactly?
It's been 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I can certainly remember what the area of Musselman Lake was like. Call it Ward 2, although I can't claim to know much more than beyond the perimeter of the lake prior to your coming on the scene, and how there were many voices, many rumors that would come around, many stories would be heard, but nobody seemed to have any sense of how to put all that together. You came along and you started working with, I believe, Rick Wigmore. And what propelled you toward that as ward councillor?
It all comes from my previous experience with the Toronto Police Service. You have to bring communities together to be able to find out exactly what the problem is. As I've always said, if you don't tell me what the problem is, I can't solve your problems. What I did here is over the first few years when I was first elected, I was listening to the different residents groups. And as you're aware, there was the Cedarville Residents Association.
Yes.
There was the Churchill Residents Association. There was the Lakeshore Residents Association. And then we had a strong group of people on Resnick who had a very strong voice. We had a strong group of people on Ninth Line. And we also had
people on Churchill Drive as well.
Yeah, and they were very strong, very vocal. What I found was each and every one of them would come to me and or come to council at different times with the same argument. But phrased in a different manner, representing their concerns in that little area. And nobody really knew each other. Nobody really connected. There was no conversation. There was no communication. And for me, it was shocking to sit back and say we had such a small little community that was so tight that nobody knew each other. There was no conversation at all. And so what I did is I reached out and I looked for leaders in the community, strong leaders in the community, people who represented the concerns of the lake and the residents, and also people who were successful in life, people who represented business interests, community interests, the environment, like yourself, and brought you all together in one room under one umbrella, and asked you to be part of a community association to help me help you. I can tell you, I remember the times that we would be in council, and there'd be 2 or 3 groups from Musselman's Lake coming to council to make proposals on similar issues, but different issues from different perspectives. And it didn't go over well with council, with the mayor and council, because we didn't have a feel for what this group represented more than what the other group represented. So in doing so, we formulated a group, we as in, myself speaking with strong representatives in the community, and that being Rick Wigmore, Dan Wigmore, yourself, getting the Davies group from Cedar Beach, getting Lisa White from up on Cedarville, getting the Connor Drive representation as well with Dan Heron, and then Churchill Beach with Jane Grinnell. And there's a very strong Churchill Beach, Churchill East and Churchill South. And we put together this association, one of the best. And I've been doing this for years, Charlene, years and years and years in Toronto.
This wasn't your first time building community.
Absolutely not. This was just a prime example of what can be done in a community when it works, when you get the cooperation of people who really want to commit themselves to betterment in the community. And we had those people. The room was full of people, and you've seen that. And what we've done together since then, the stewardship plan for Musselman's Lake, the management plan for Musselman's Lake, the studies for Musselman's Lake, all of the events that we have run up in Musselman's Lake in the community. And it's all provided us with great direction, new positive wave of excitement and enthusiasm for all the residents getting involved and being part of a new generation of residents moving into the area and representing the area. And as you go back, as you stated, we go back 11 years, 2003 when I was first elected. And you look at the many buildings, homes,
residences,
residences in the area, and how that's it's moved into a new generation now, with new residents moving in and building new residences in the community.
So the houses got bigger, is what you're saying, and they got a lot more expensive, and they got a lot fancier. And the days of the Boyd gang and the days of a lot of the biker gangs, and I'm going to talk just very directly and off the hip because that's how I am, but that's also what I know about the lake. All of that is going the way of the dodo, thank goodness. And there is, as you say, a different consciousness, if I can use that word, for all the collective up at the lake. It doesn't mean everything's perfect. It doesn't mean people don't get into squabbles. People are people. But the vision you present is exactly what has happened. There's been a regeneration, or a generation for the first time, of a sense of, yes, we can help the lake. This, I think, was a number one focus for so many people and allowed us to put aside anything else and just say, but it's good for the lake. And if you can say that still, after all these years of cleanup, you're still picking up 2 large bins of trash from around the lake, good grief. That if we put all those bins of garbage together, how many would there be, Phil? There'd be too many of them.
Way too many. Way too many.
Yeah.
We're still collecting too much garbage.
Yeah,
we
isn't
really
that
are.
Astonishing?
And it shocks me, but the lake has never been in better shape. As you're aware of the most recent reports that have been released here, it's incredible. And people are looking at the green algae now that's on the lake, but that's not a problem. That's all related to plant growth. And as we progress, as we move into the summer, you're going to see that disappear. But, you just
promised us summer. Now, as a politician, I do think you've extended yourself just slightly toward the weather gods, and I don't know if that's a wise idea. They're being sacrificed across the country as we speak, Phil.
I can't go back on that. What I'm going to say,
Alrighty.
There will be a summer. I
there
just can't
tell
you if it's going to be a hot summer.
There you go. There you go. Well, I'm glad to hear that, though, about the sludge. I definitely, over my 25 years of living right on the lake, have come to understand the lake has its own cycles. The lake will come with cycles where there will be green sludge. I'll tell you, this is the first time the green sludge has not emitted a horrible odor. Yeah. And I don't know if I assume that's a good thing. It's certainly good for me. But the lake itself has, it seems, a self-cleaning system, because I've literally seen the water changing, the cleanliness coming back, the lack of the foam on the shoreline. Now, some of that came from the levels of government that decided to take an interest in Musselman because it's at a high point, as I understand it, for Lake Simcoe and for the Holland Marsh. We're at a point where the waters all flow downwards, so whatever's happening here, we're the canary in the mine. But it doesn't matter to me really how that happened. I think it's just great that it did. And then I think it's amazing and very, very informative and affirming to see so many different people from different walks of life coming together to try to clean up the lake, to try to preserve it, to feel it as our pride and our joy, and that we really are the stewards that have to take care of it for the next generations. And we've done that primarily without becoming all the scattered kind of loud voices that we can be, under your direction and the Musselman Lake Residents Association direction. So I'm very grateful for that, and for all of the activity that you've put into our area. Now, I have to ask you a question. As a longtime resident of Musselman Lake, there's a question that you always ask someone. I should have asked you before, but I didn't. And the question is, okay, so how long have you lived here? And if you talk to anybody at the lake, that's the one question they want to know, because if you've lived there for 20 years and they've lived there for 25, they've got the badge and you don't. So I want to ask you, Phil Bannon, how long have you lived up in that area?
I've lived up in that area for 13 years.
13 years up there. You're up around Ballantrae.
Up in Ballantrae. Actually, it's 12 and a half years, and I've been on council for 11 years. It's one of these things where, your heart belongs to your community and your soul belongs to your community. And back in 2003, when I registered to run, I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and we've gone beyond what I hoped that we could achieve together. And I sit back, and I was actually going back through, because I've registered to run for mayor in the upcoming municipal election. So I was going through some of my old paperwork and some of my old flyers. And my flyers in 2003 when I was running, and in 2006 when I was running for re-election. And back at that time there, I was making commitments to the community that I will assure you that I will have a stewardship lake management plan in place. And I also made a commitment to you that you will have a community park.
I'm so excited. I remember that. I remember that folder. I remember that flyer. I remember that face. And I remember thinking, he's not from around here. But there you are. Now, I have one question before we talk about the very important community park. And the question is, what made you choose to come to Stouffville area and then run? Did you do a demographic? Did you just do a drive-by and decide you liked the area? Was there a family here prior? What happened? How did that evolve?
We'd lived in Unionville for 20 years, raised our kids in Unionville. And when we first moved to Unionville in 1981, 1982, it was a small, quaint little community.
Right.
It was a small, quaint little Ballantrae.
Yes.
And I saw that, and I fell in love with the community and moved in. And I certainly didn't move in with the intention of running in politics, because you'll find that I was on the Toronto Police Service, and policing and politics are not, they're kind of like oil and water.
Yeah.
You know, they don't mix well.
My husband, as an ex-policeman, has informed me with a few colorful stories to that effect.
It's not a fine blend.
Yeah.
But I was convinced by a number of concerned, caring, and supportive residents in the community and neighbors that they felt that we needed someone with this kind of a strong voice and this kind of a commitment to the community to stand up and lead the charge for what I would consider to be a legitimate cause at the time. For me, at that time, I felt that the rural areas were not being fairly represented. There was not enough tax dollars being spent outside of the town. And I made a commitment that I would like to see 50 cents of every dollar spent outside the town that's being spent inside the town, because our roads weren't being paved. Our sidewalks, which we don't have, our curbs, which we don't have, our parks that we really didn't have a lot of, our services, which were very limited compared to in-town services. And I felt that on council, as I eventually took notice, was we're repaving roads, we're rebuilding sidewalks, we're rebuilding curbs, and we're reselling trees and parks and stuff like that. And you know what? You've seen the change. You've seen the change.
Absolutely.
And I made that commitment. I've stood by that. And,
the signs
and here we are.
in particular are very pretty. I like those signs.
We're in a better place.
Yeah, we definitely are. And the Coultice property, which I grew up riding horses on and have a tremendous deep affection for, is now being turned into a glorious park for all of us. Please talk about this. I know this is a project of 7 years duration, and probably more from your background. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, it actually goes back about 8.5, 9 years. When I was first on council, and it was in our first term. And I remember there was a cry from some residents down on 10th Line who were concerned about a little parkette that they wanted in their community. And I remember speaking up and saying, you know what, they deserve to have a parkette. You know, when we get these communities, when we are establishing and supporting these new communities, we should be aware of the fact that they need parks. Well, the town staff at the time felt that, no, what happens is we took payment in lieu of a park, because these are large estate lots, and these people bought in the area, and they provided their own sort of scenes for parks in their backyards, their pools, their trampolines, their playground equipment and such. And so
what you're talking about is the developers' monies that come in and that generally have a little bow around a part of the package that says this is for park. And what the town was doing at that time was saying, no, you don't really need the park because of all the reasons you've just... I just wanted to clarify where that money was coming from.
And I felt at the time the number one priority in the town for me at the time was a park for Musselman's Lake. That wasn't anywhere to be discussed with the residents. It wasn't anything that I'd heard from any residents when I asked about input from you, like, what do you want? What do you need? What do you see down the future? It was my idea to sit back and say, well, you know what? From what I've seen in the past, from what I've where I've worked and everything that I've accomplished, it's all got to do with families and families spending time together, playing together, staying in their communities together, not having to leave your community for services, facilities, and programs. And so I had staff. I asked the mayor and council at the time to support my request to have staff do a study. And the study came through exactly what I felt, was that Musselman's Lake was a community that was in need of a local park. So the council at the time, and I thank the mayor and council at the time, supported me. And we put the plan in action, and we started putting money aside in our park fund. So for the 7, 8 9 years now, we have been putting money aside for it. And we had a selection process, as you know. Yes. Staff went out to the community and reached out to the community. And they wanted input, direction. And they also did a good study in the area to find the best location for a park at the best price. And the Coultice property came available for us. Charlene, what a magnificent site it is. It's it's right opposite the lake, across the street from the lake. It's going to be a 4.5 acre parkette. We're going to have attached to it somewhere in the area of 135 acres of conservation land, trails, parkettes, walkways.
If you haven't been on this land, you need to be on this land to understand the most uneducated or unaware of us taking a walk on this land would feel what the Native Americans have been saying about land. There's a spirit in this land. There's a joy and a vitality to it that tells you nothing bad has happened in that land for a very long time. And because you have saved the 135 acres, nothing ever will, cross our fingers, etc. Now, I know there have been some difficulties personally, but I'm talking about historic massacres or anything of that nature. The land itself is beautiful, strong, thriving, and very, very healthy. So I'm delighted to hear about the success of the park. You got about a minute to wrap up, Mr. Bannon, for today, but I'm going to have you back on for sure.
Don't worry about the change. That land has been dedicated to the Conservation Authority.
Fabulous.
And the 4.5 acre park is, we've approved that, and we're in the process now. Staff will be contacting the local residents, and we will be reaching out, and we'll be having a meeting to see what the residents actually want to have in their park.
Wonderful.
And you will see some sort of work being done by the leisure services staff in the next couple of months, going in there and clearing the property and getting it prepared for what we're expecting to be one of the nicest parks in all of Stouffville. It's just great. It's spine-tingling for me when I talk about it.
What an accomplishment. I can see it all over your face. It's great. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Phil Bannon, for coming in today and filling us in on some of your background. We look forward to seeing you again, hearing you again in probably August, September, and October as we ride closer to the election day.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you very much.
Bye for now. And that's it, Stouffville. Another program of Off the Top. That's it. That's all. And remember, Stouffville, be kind to your family and friends. WhiStle Radio 102.7 FM.